First off, Linda Edelstein, can you tell me a little bit about yourself? And just thanks again for taking the time to speak with me. Just it's great to hear from different types of perspectives for those that aren't academia or left academia, or maybe somewhere in between. So can you tell me just a little bit more about yourself? Anything that you'd like to share just to start off?
Sure. Thank you for having me.
Of
I
course.
I think I'm one of those in-between people.
Mhm.
I sort of left academia, but I hovered. I hovered around. So I got my master's in counseling psychology at Indiana University and my PhD at Northwestern University. And then my stint in academia was part-time core faculty at the Chicago School of Professional Psychology, for 15 years, teaching different courses. And then for
Mhm.
10 more years, I was an adjunct at Northwestern.
Yeah, and just to know, and sorry, and just to know, like I'm also an alumni from Indiana University. So we do have that in common. But I would say though that I guess my question is like, how has like academia really changed since when you were in school? Because I think we both had maybe different like life experiences when I was in school versus when you were in school. So maybe can you talk a little bit about that and just how like the things you've seen change over the years?
Well, I've been away. I stopped teaching about more than 15 years ago, so I've been away.
Mm.
But when I was in my PhD program and my master's program, I think there was way more flexibility than
Yeah.
there probably is now. That if I wanted a certain practicum or internship, I could go and find something. If I wanted to
Mhm.
take courses in a different place, I could do that as long as I could convince someone to sign off on it. And I think the trend over time has been standardization, that you do this, you do this, you do this, with less wiggle room than I had, which worked for me. I
Mhm.
I had a good experience.
Yeah, and I guess that's my other question. Like, do you still kind of have favorable opinions of academia? And maybe it's I don't know if it's like nostalgia, it could be. Because I know a lot of people on social media complain about academia, but again, like I think when we use terms like academia, it can be kind of broad, maybe not speak to like individual experiences. So maybe could you speak a little bit more about just about that, like your feelings towards it, maybe why you kind of went in and out of it?
Um, the PhD program, I think, was transformative. It
Mhm.
was way, way more than just absorbing information.
Yeah,
I think it turned me into a psychologist,
yeah.
basically, which is an identity thing more than some kind of accumulation of data points.
Mhm.
And that's a big deal. And I'm really
Yeah.
grateful for that. Did I think everything that went on in graduate school was great? No. I
Mhm.
think sometimes there's almost a sadistic bent toward students of make it
Mhm.
hard, make it really hard for people.
Yeah.
When I was out and then I was on the other side and I was the professor, I loved it. Absolutely loved teaching. I got to teach courses that I developed. I got to teach the psychotherapy classes.
Mhm.
So that was terrific. I really, really enjoyed it, both down at the Chicago School and then when I came up here to Northwestern.
Yeah, and it sounds like from what you're saying that that PhD really teaches you how to think, and that does seem to be like a very, very valuable like asset or kind of a skill to learn, especially if you're like
I think that's a
looking for
terrific way to
careers
put
outside
it.
of academia.
First of all, I think it teaches you to think,
Mm,
teaches you to
that's true.
really think. And then when you think you know what you're doing, somebody tells you you really don't, and you've got to go think about it some more.
Yeah.
So I think that might be one of the ways it's transformative
Yeah.
is it changes how you go about everything. And I think there's a rigor and a discipline that you get from those years that's quite useful.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And it seems like it kind of transverses like across different disciplines as well, like whether you're like in STEM or in the arts, like just critical thinking like is does seem like a very like important attribute I'm seeing. So in terms of like what you're doing now, and I'd like to talk a little bit more about that because it is like about after your PhD. I do want to know
Mhm.
like so like my understanding is that you're writing fiction right now, and I'm kind of can you speak more to that? Maybe the types of fiction that you're writing and the types of like stories you're writing.
I love writing. I love to talk about fiction writing, especially. I didn't start when I first graduated, I wrote nonfiction and I published, I think, 4 or 5
Mhm.
nonfiction books. And I just wanted to write fiction.
Mhm.
So I thought, why not, right? Why not? And years ago, I wrote a mystery novel that was so awful. Even a friend told me to put it away. That's how bad it was. And I did, I put it away. Um, and it took place in Indiana. That was the
Or-
setting for it, was a fire in a garage in Indiana.
Oh,
Isn't
wow.
that a blockbuster?
Well, I haven't read it, so I can't really speak to it. Be good.
Um, but writing fiction to me in
Mhm.
some ways is it's part of the storytelling. It's part of understanding people. It's part of putting together lives. It doesn't feel that different from my clinical work sometimes,
Mhm.
which is also learning about people and stories. And where else would I meet so many people and hear about lives that are so different from my own? It's it's a way in. And I think that's why we like to read stories, because they give us they give us a window into something that we might not otherwise experience.
Yeah, and when it comes to fiction, like maybe your perspective on writing fiction, do you like view fiction more as like an escape of like what you're currently living, like in terms of like, because when I read fiction, sometimes I want to like maybe not think about what's happening currently. But fiction, I guess, could also be like a reflection of what you see around you, kind of what uh like real life, like even though it's not nonfiction, it's still fiction, but I guess just more speaking, like how do you view writing fiction as an escape or reflection, or is it something else? Maybe I'm not really getting at.
Yeah. To me, fiction is an escape. I read
Yeah.
fiction to
Okay.
escape. I love the escape in writing fiction. I like
Mhm.
work. I can spend ridiculous amounts of time thinking about a word or a paragraph or editing something, and it's very meditative
Mhm.
for me when it's not terribly painful and feels awful, but mostly it feels really good. But what I like to write is I like mysteries. So,
Mhm.
and that's what I'm writing. And the one that I just finished, I wrote with a friend from graduate school.
Mhm.
And we decided we would each write one character and put them together and
Okay.
create a plot. So
Yeah.
that's what we did.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I don't think I could be that creative doing something like that. And uh so like I'm sorry, I was trying to think of my next question. So when it comes to like other academics, so people that are watching and listening, for those that are really interested, let's say they want to write a mystery novel or a different type of like novel, like how would they really start this process? Like who would they talk to? Like, let's say I have an idea for a new mystery novel. Like, what do I do next to get it
One of
published?
the
Yeah.
differences between nonfiction and fiction,
Hmm.
not you can send a prospectus or a proposal to
Hmm.
nonfiction for nonfiction, and you can get a contract before you've even written it. I had
Yeah.
an idea years ago to write a book for people who wanted to be writers based on
Hmm.
psychology. So it's a book basically of 400 lists, all research studies, but then lists of character traits, the writer's guide to character traits.
Yeah.
And it was very popular because lots of people want to be, and this gave them a quick reference point in order to help help them create characters. When you write fiction, nobody wants to talk to you until you have a finished novel. And not just a finished novel, but a
Mhm.
really clean one.
Yeah.
So
I
you're
could,
taking quite a chance.
yeah, and it seems like at least what I'm seeing, like there's a lot of social media personalities that already have like this large following, and
Yeah.
then it's like they can get that deal faster or a lot easier because there, there's like a built-in audience. So yeah, I think there's also that challenge as well, of just like getting your foot in the door in the first place. So in terms of like publication, are there any certain like publishers that are open to like submissions for nonfiction or fiction? Or is it just a matter of like if someone's interested, they just have to kind of do the research and kind of look around for publishers?
I just want to go back for a second to what you said about people with a following. They asked you
Mhm.
that question.
Yeah, I
They
would have, I bet.
and ask. An agent will ask, publisher will ask, the marketing people will ask, what are your
Mhm.
platforms? How many followers have? What's your reach? All of that kind of stuff. And if you
Mhm.
have a real reach, yeah, you have a way better chance of getting a deal than if you don't. I've
Mhm.
published with a lot of different publishing houses, including the big ones like John Wiley and
Mhm.
Penguin Random House, and they were all lovely to work with, but it's a business. It's
Yeah.
just a business. And if you're selling something they want to buy, yeah. The mystery, we were told, one person told us, because the characters are older, because we were writing for fun.
Mhm. Yeah.
And they said, that they were looking for something more supernatural. I don't even know what that thing would be.
I guess
So
like
they're
Stephen
looking
King.
for certain things.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's like they're trying to meet a certain demographic or trying to meet a certain like
Yeah.
what's trending or popular. So that is definitely a challenge. So I guess to bring it back to like academic, I guess, pursuits in academia. Like, are you pulling like your own experiences into these books that you're writing, whether it's like nonfiction or fiction? And can you maybe speak more to that, just how that kind of influences your writing?
I I think my academic training has influenced absolutely everything. And I
Mhm.
think the core of me is a clinical psychologist. The
Yeah,
teaching came from being a psychologist. The writing is so heavily influenced by being a psychologist. And given that everything is confidential, there's not I can't use a lot. I can't
mhm.
use an incident from anybody's life. That would
Yeah,
be totally unfair as well as unethical.
yeah, of
But
course.
certainly experiences, the idea of experiences, what people go through, and then change it, transform it, turn
Mhm.
it into my characters, or ways that people talk, things like that.
Yeah.
Yes, I steal. Writers are thieves. We steal from everybody.
Yeah, no, and I was thinking about that too, like when like internal monologues, like I could see like psychologists having a really like good upper hand of like how people might like think or like types of thinking. So yeah, that's definitely a plus when it comes to
Yes,
like that
more
type of
than your
writing.
own experience.
Yeah. Yeah, because I guess there's like yeah, I was
Right.
trying to think of like how people think, maybe like I can't really get too much into that, but I think you better easily could better do that. But yeah, so I think that does like certainly help. So in terms of like for those that are watching or listening, just can you list off some of those titles? Because I know that I can drop them in like the comments, just so in case if people are interested in maybe purchasing the book. I just want to make sure that it's like available for people to find. But it might just help to kind of know some of those titles if you have those.
Of course, I've got them memorized.
Yeah.
I tell them to everybody on the street.
Yeah.
The first book after grad school was called Maternal Bereavement, and it was
Mhm.
interviews. It was a study of women whose children had died and
Yeah.
the grief process and how they came out on the other side. Another one was The Art of Midlife, which was creative change and Midlife, another interview book. There was The Writer's Guide to Character Traits. That was all the lists for novelists to help them create characters. With my friend Charlie Whaler, we wrote What Do I Say? Therapist Guide to Answering Questions for New Therapists. And in that one, we invited colleagues to give their vignettes of how they handled things. And that one was fun. All of them were fun, but they're all fun differently. And then when I was still teaching, I invited my grad students to work with me, and we took the grief book and rewrote it. And they, 6 of them, researched and each wrote a chapter. So we published that one as Shattered, and it's a different version for lay people about it. And the new one is called Not the Trip We Planned. It's written with my friend and colleague Carol Kerr, and it's coming out in March 2025, published by Kohler. You know what else I was just thinking of when you were saying something? That you get the idea of different people. One of the conversations Carol and I had was we tended to be too polite in our characters. It got really boring. They got really, really boring.
Yeah,
and we didn't want them to be nasty, and we wanted them to be nice. And then we realized this is just like boring conversation. And we had to get out of ourselves and get into things that we would never probably say to anybody, but our characters could say it. And the character that I wrote is kind of snappy. And a couple of months ago, I took her I didn't take her out of the book, but I started a blog that she writes, not me. I don't write it, but she writes a blog. Because in the novel, she writes a blog. So now she's really writing a blog, and it's leading up to when the book will be published. So that's been fun.
Oh, wait, so there's like a live blog right now of like this character that's pretty smart though. I wonder if it's been done before. It's a pretty smart idea, actually. It's kind of creative.
It's probably been done before, but it's funny because I try to write in her voice because she's way cleverer and more sarcastic than I am. And I wrote some story, and my cousin sent me an email saying, that never happened. And I said, of course not, because I made it all up. It isn't me. But of course, my voice is in there too. So let me tell you, it's called chickiesblog.com. CHICKIESBLOG.com.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll definitely include that in the comments as well, or I guess in the description, of course. So I just want to leave the floor open just for any thoughts, whether it's like your experience, like as an academic or just working like as a writer. Do you have any like advice that you could share just for those that maybe feel lost about the direction maybe that they're heading? Maybe they don't know if they want to stay in academia, pursue something else. Just any of your thoughts is welcome.
Okay. I think now that I'm much older, I wish I had been braver. I wish I had more courage earlier and wrote even more and more of what I wanted. And if people didn't like it, oh, well, that happens. So I think one message is, if you want to do it, just do it. There's never enough time, and you're never going to be perfect and all of those things. But you have to just say, screw it. I want to do it. I want to do it. And if I fail, at least I will have failed doing something that I'm enjoying.
Yeah. Well, and like PhD programs, like they take years of your life. So, I mean, you got to really put it in perspective and kind of figure out like what you want to do with your life. So, I think that is a great point.
And nobody in your PhD program is ever, unless you're in an English department, going to tell you go write a novel. They're going to tell you go do research, in the field that you're being trained in. So I think a lot of it is, well, you're doing on the side of academia. We find things that we really want and we just go for them.
Yeah. No, I think that makes sense. Like just during all that time when you're in like a program, like something might come up that kind of sparks your interests or something else. Like I think that's why I like my program because I wanted to do film studies and then I pivoted into something else. I lean more into social science research because I felt like there's some skills that I wanted to develop that I wasn't really developing as a film studies like theorist, and I just employment didn't seem as likely. But yeah, just the ability just to see other disciplines too helped me a lot. So I think there is that ability to like see what's out there even like in a program too. So I think it's always great to like just keep an open mind, whatever
Yes.
program you're really in, because you never know. You never know what will happen. So it's good to do.
You never know what'll happen, but nothing's going to happen if you don't give it a try,
Exactly. Yeah.
right?
It'll just be a regret and then you just have regret and that's it. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good point. Yeah. So thanks again, Linda, for taking the time to speak with me. Be sure to include all those the information there, including your LinkedIn profile in case if anybody wants to reach out, maybe ask you any questions, if they want to learn more about your experiences, maybe that for an ask in this video. So yeah, thank you so much.